Hello guys, Omni here. This is going to be a chunky little video because this panel I couldn't find online. I think this was a private viewing for the Marvel Phase 4 lineup reveal at Comic-Con today. This is the big meaty thing that everybody was looking forward to, especially when they heard that Marvel was going to be coming to this year's Comic-Con, and they dropped a whole bunch of stuff, pretty much just laid out a huge chunk of Phase 4. Surprisingly so, with a lot of surprise stuff. Just reading over a lot of this stuff, this might as well be a reaction and a news thing because holy crap, it's just like I expected some news. I didn't expect them to just drop all of this information, but we got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. They pretty much kicked off the thing showing us some footage from Black Widow, which will be the first movie to really drop into Phase 4, coming in at May 1st, 2020, and they finally set in stone the timeline for the movie. A lot of people were thinking this was going to be a prequel, an origin story for Black Widow, which there may be some elements of that in there, considering there is some agents that show up in this that, at least in the comic timeline, are somebody that she had trained with prior to becoming a good, a hero, and who also could be set up as the next, the successor to the Black Widow, who would be the new Black Widow going into the future of the MCU. But they did set in stone that this movie, primarily, the core of the story takes place after Civil War, but before Infinity War, filling in the gaps between the time period that Natasha and the band of miscreants were on the run, investigating these enemy intelligence agencies and stuff like that across the globe, and that'll primarily be the focus of the film. It'll be going heavily into like a James Bond-ish kind of Jason Bourne territory spy thriller, much like Winter Soldier was, focusing on those elements, especially because that is what Natasha is. The villain, or at least a villain for the film, has been revealed and shown to be Taskmaster, which is a fun little villain. It fits in very well with that kind of character and what they're going to be doing. A lot of hand-to-hand stuff, a lot of tactical, thought-provoking things. If you're not too familiar with the character, he's shown up recently in the SpiderMan PS4 game, so that's pretty neat. After that, they did show a slot for a fall 2020 untitled Marvel project. No idea what that would be. The next thing on the docket was the Eternals for a November 5th, 2020 release. They didn't really give a whole lot of information for this. Pretty much the only thing I could find was that they pretty much just revealed the full cast. I don't know enough about the Eternals to really tell you anything about who any of these characters are, but we got Selma Hayek confirmed, we got Angelina Jolie confirmed, we got Richard Madden and Kamal Nanjiani confirmed to be joining the MCU, as long as some other people as well in their own kind of roles. The Eternals are like celestial beings, much like Thanos, Grandmaster, all those kind of beings. And so it's very, they were created by Jack Kirby, so there's going to be a lot of interstellar mechanics in there, a lot of really trippy imagery, more than likely some crazy Flash Gordon kind of Thor Ragnarok kind of vibes, if you can kind of picture that for the most part. You can go look it up, just some ideas of the artwork behind the Eternals and what they're going to be. They did say who was going to be playing who, but like I said, I don't really know much about those core characters. That wasn't ever a thing I followed into. But after that, they announced, we all knew there was a Shang-Chi movie coming out, but we got the title of the movie, and the title of the movie is super thought-provoking, and it is something we've really been kind of holding out onto for a while now in the MCU, and it's called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. They confirmed and have cast a person to play the true Mandarin. We all know the whole debacle with the controversy of Iron Man 3, and I'm not going to make this about my thoughts on Iron Man 3 or what that should have been, because there's a much better movie in my head than what we got. I know plenty of people did like Iron Man 3, but anyway, moving on. Mandarin will be making an appearance, will be the main primary villain for Shang-Chi, and that's pretty interesting for sure. I'm not sure how Shang-Chi can combat that. From what I know, he's basically like he's a street level kind of Iron Fist. Am I wrong? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the character too much. I just know that he specializes in martial arts. I don't know if he has any special powers. Maybe chi related things, I would imagine, but I don't know. the Mandarin is borderline a demigod with all the magic he can wield with the 10 rings themselves. But I don't know how far they're going to go with that. Shang-Chi has a February 12th, 2021 release, followed by, I'm going to preface this one. Kevin Feige did say that, Mysterio lied about his origin, but he might not have known it. But he told the truth regarding the multiverse, because we have confirmation of the existence of this multiverse, even though we already know it exists because of the effects of Endgame. At least confirm that they started a multiverse by making those changes in the past. So I don't know if it existed before their effects or if they created the multiverse by going back in time and triggering these events. Who knows how they'll explain it. But next on the lineup is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And they describe this movie as being a trippy, scary horror film. They classified this as MCU's first horror film. It will be a scary, terrifying journey that Doctor Strange goes on along with Scarlet Witch. She will be in there. And WandaVision, the Disney Plus show, is going to kind of preface that film and show you how she gets involved and how she goes from where she is in that show into the events of this film with Doctor Strange. It'll be it sounds crazy, weird, and interesting. And if the trippy visuals of just the first Doctor Strange is just something you can imagine, I think they could go to the ends of the earth and beyond and what they can do with what this is going to be, especially with two powerful wielders of magic and reality that you can do a lot of things with that. That's showing in locked in for a May 7th, 2021 release. Now, all these dates could shift around slightly up until this point, but right now, these are the ones that are locked into. We got a summer 2021 untitled Marvel project, followed by Thor, Love and Thunder. Now, we already knew before this, going into Comic-Con, that Taika Waititi had signed on to do a Thor 4, but they threw a major wrench into this, and this is something that I was suspected ever since Thor 1 came out, that there's a direction that Thor can go into eventually if, Chris Hemsworth ever wants to pass on the hammer. And I wondered where they were going to go with that, or if they were going to do it, but with some drama that was happening in the background with some of the actors, actresses, whatever, it's starting to see like it might not happen or somebody else would be picking it up, but they did confirm that Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson will be returning for their roles in this movie. But they are not returning alone. We got another returning cast member making their return to the MCU. Jane Foster, played by Natalie Portman, who did not like being a part of the MCU or the Thor movies originally, is back. Probably because of this revitalized interest, that energy that Taika Waititi has brought to the franchise, to the world of Thor, and what the imagery and the creative genius of his mind. I love all of his work, his films, everything. Thor Ragnarok really turned that character around. I don't know where this leaves Thor. In the comics, he passes on Mjolnir to Jade Foster. I don't know if he passed it on himself. I just know that she ends up with the hammer and she becomes the current Thor. So I don't know where that's going to leave Chris Hemsworth Thor for the future of the MCU from this point out. Maybe he will join the Asgardians of the Galaxy, and I know James Gunn hates when people calls it that. So who knows? Maybe he'll just be in Guardians. He does still have Stormbreaker. I don't know if he'll be passing that on the stage. They just give like a Mjolnir prop and hand it to Natalie Portman to become the female Thor as she is in the comics. I don't know if they'll go the cancer route or not, which would be interesting. I would really like to see that brought to life if they did that. I don't know how much they would want to have Natalie Portman shave her head or maybe wear a bald cap. I mean, they can do it without that. They can still say she's got cancer and not have to go that route. But that is kind of a core element of that character and that arc when she becomes Thor. So who knows? We got a November 5th, 2021 release for Thor Love and Thunder. aside from that, that's the end of the movie dates that we have for the Marvel films. Going on, now there's a couple things. They did throw out a bunch of names for projects to reconfirm some things that are in the works. Of course, we know there's a Captain Marvel 2 being worked on, a Black Panther 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, of course. No dates for any of these, but here's the kicker at the end of all of this. We got Fantastic Four thrown in the lineup. And that's not the end of all the surprises. Mahershala Ali comes off on stage wearing a hat. Given a hat. There's a bunch of different hats that have different things on them or whatever, and he hasn't put his on yet. And he's like, you've got your own hat, your own special hat. And he puts it on, and it says Blade. And then the screen behind them lights up and just says Blade. And they confirm Mahershala Ali is the MCU's Blade. And, you know, I grew up vehemently on the Wesley Snipes iteration of the character. For me, like, he was synonymous with Blade, like I would think Robert Downey Jr. is with Iron Man now. And I know even Wesley Snipes has been vying and fighting, having conversations with Marvel over, you know, reprising his role as Blade. So I'm really curious to how that goes, or how maybe those talks went that resulted in this turnabout. So that's really interesting to see, that definitely, because Blade is going to be something, because Kevin Feige always keeps reiterating all this PG-13 is kind of the cap for the MCU brand. And I don't know how you do a PG-13 Blade. So who knows? But the only other thing that comes out of that, which is really, it's like this, the final nail in the coffin for the Marvel Netflix shows, because he was also Cottonmouth in Luke Cage. So that pretty much kind of seals the deal that the MCU just doesn't have a plan for those characters, or at least the actors playing those characters. We might see the characters again later, portrayed by different people, which sucks, because man, do I want Charlie Cox to be in the MCU as that Daredevil. I love every iteration of those shows' characters and the way they approach that. And even though the shows took the time to acknowledge the MCU just never took the time to acknowledge them, and it just feels like such a missed opportunity. Another surprising thing to note from the conference was that there is no Spider-Man on this lineup, which makes me wonder if the Untitled's might actually be the Spider-Man films, because, you know, I think from this point on, especially after Far From Home, it really leaves Sony open to do a lot of stuff with Tom Holland, free from the MCU. I think the way that Far From Home ends, it can definitely leave them very well open to just kind of distance Spider-Man a little bit from the MCU, since Far From Home was so tied and integral to being part of the MCU that it was almost not even a Spider-Man movie. Despite being a really great film, but I think that was the only thing that kept it from being the best Spider-Man film, is what it was it was just a film about Spider-Man in an Iron Man story, for the most part. So I don't know, maybe Sony's really trying to reel like that property back in, but I really love Tom Holland in this universe. So I really hope that's the case. I hope these Untitled's, or maybe just, these are open because we don't know what Sony's going to be doing. So that's what I hope. But with a fall 2020, I don't think that's going to be a Spider-Man, because that is way too soon, I would imagine. So I don't know. I hope there's a future for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to still stay in the MCU. I'm really curious to see how that pans out. I'm a little worried about that, to be honest. But we're going to move on to the Disney Plus shows. Now, these are scattered differently. I did all the movies first. I just kind of separated these, but the shows are going to be sprinkled in between a lot of these theatrical releases. I'm sure there's going to be tie-ins between them both in different manners. But the first one coming out is going to be Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And they did have Anthony Mackie come out on stage with the shield, and he did talk about how he has tried on the Captain America suit. So I don't know. I mean, they're still calling it Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I don't know if he's going to be going by Captain America, or maybe this show will end with him finally donning the moniker. So who knows? It is after Endgame. They showed a little bit of a clip of Baron Zemo, the actor reprising his role from Civil War, playing the character once again and donning the iconic helmet from the comics. So he is at least one of, or if not the main antagonist of the first season of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, with a fall 2020 release. Next in the lineup is WandaVision, which will be exploring Scarlet Witch's psychological state of mind in her headspace after losing Vision after the events of Thanos, and how she's dealing with having been dusted and missed this whole like 5 years past, and her, mourning of her lost love and all of that stuff, and her really coming into her powers more. Well, we saw her really dive into when she was fighting Thanos with that thirst for vengeance. And they said that this will really be the true evolution of her from Wanda into the Scarlet Witch. And I don't know what that means, because they did say that she will carry on and continue into Doctor Strange, into the multiverse of madness. But I don't know what they mean by she will become the Scarlet Witch. Maybe if that's, she learns how to manipulate reality. They talk about how she gets kind of trapped in her headspace. So there's some clips and imagery that shows like a really kind of 1940s, 1950s kind of vibe. So maybe she traps herself in a alternate reality where she has this perfect like home-styled life with her love, with Vision in a sweater kind of thing. They kept using the word weird to describe the show and the way it's going to pan out. It's going to be the weirdest show, they said, to talk about. It's also going to star a character we haven't seen since Captain Marvel will be a main player in this, and it'll be Monica Rambeau. And so this show may introduce how she gets the powers that she gets in the comics to become Miss Marvel. And this show is going to have a spring 2021 release. Next on the lineup was Loki, which they didn't really give anything past the title card for this. But they did confirm that the show will star the Loki that got away with the Tesseract, as most of us started to kind of theorize, speculate, and assume. And just kind of think of it, the way it sounds is he's going to be going through time just being mischievous. He's really in a point where he feels defeated, humiliated, and wants revenge. So we're kind of going back into that. Tom Hiddleston has talked about how what he read, what they were wanting to do, and felt excited with it. So kind of excused the backpedaling that and undoing of all the character development that Loki's had over the past couple of movies. So apparently it's going to be a worth journey. So I hope so. It sounds like it's going to be evil Doctor Who with him time traveling and jumping through space and time with the Tesseract, but who knows? I don't know what the release date on it is. I just know that it is in 2021. Next up was the What If animated series. They confirmed that the narrator of the series, who will be telling us the stories, kind of like in a Crypt Keeper kind of way, he will be narrating our journey through the multiverse of these what if scenarios. The narrator is Jeffrey Wright, who will be the voice of the Watcher, who will be the one introducing us and taking us on this tour through all these different realities where different people get different abilities. The example being used, I think what the first episode is actually going to be, is what if Peggy Carter got the super soldier serum and became Captain America rather than Steve Rogers. There's going to be a lot of weird things like that, and I think that's the show that I'm most excited for to checking out. There's so many possibilities with that they can go just insane with all kinds of different theories, different plans, and theory. Like you can have like scenarios where, what if the Avengers lost at New York? What happened then? What if Tony Stark died in that cave and never became Iron Man? How the world and the events would have panned out differently. What if Thor picked up Thor's hammer? Or what if Hulk picked up Thor's hammer and became Thor instead? Who knows? There's so many different possibilities. That's got a summer 2021 release. And then the last show that they talked about was Hawkeye. I didn't go too much into it, except that Jeremy Renner will be training a new Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, who arguably they state is the best Hawkeye from the comics, which I don't know. I'm not familiar with the character, but he's basically taken a mentorship role to train his successor in becoming the next Hawkeye. That's going to have a fall 2021 release. And that is it for the Marvel Phase 4 panel. I think that's everything that I could find. So if there's anything I missed, please let me know in the comments. So far, out of the films, I think I'm most excited for Thor and the Doctor Strange movie. The Doctor Strange movie sounds like something completely insane and interesting and off the wall, and I just want to see it. I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I love the first Doctor Strange film, and I think that there's a lot of really interesting things that they can do with that. Next in line is Thor, because I still love the team up of Hemsworth and Thompson. They're great. They're still going to be in the movie, and I'm really curious how they're going to play off and hand off Mjolnir to Jane Foster and how that's going to play into it. I'm really curious to see how that comes out, and just seeing Natalie Portman back in this universe again and maybe having a good time. TV show wise, really, the only one I'm really interested in is maybe the Loki show and What If. I'll still be watching all of them because I'm easily signing up for Disney Plus when it drops. There's like almost no reason not to, with all the stuff that's going to be on it and all the original content, all the Disney homebrew stuff that's going to be on there as well. I mean, why wouldn't you? Oh my God, it looks awesome. I'm so excited. I want to know what you guys think. I really do. I want to know all your thoughts in the comments. What are your theories for a lot of these things? Is there anything I got wrong? Is there anything I missed? Let me know in the comments. I want to know. I want to have these conversations. I think this is going to be the one where hopefully we can have like a very active comment thread. I would love to just share some thoughts and theories on where this is going to go. I know there's a lot of things in the comics that I'm not too familiar with. I'm much more versed in DC's comic lore than I am with Marvel's. So there is some things that I haven't known. A lot of my education for the Marvel Universe has been from the SpiderMan animated show, the X-Men animated show, and just really the MCU itself, along with the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games. Aside from Spider-Man, I never really read too many of the actual comics. I've read Civil War. That's like the only main thread that I actually have read through for Marvel. The MCU really has turned me into like a Marvel fan, like huge. Like aside from Spider-Man and the X-Men, growing up, like that was about it for me as far as what I cared about. That was Marvel. I loved me Spider-Man. I love some Spider-Man, dude. And X-Men as well were just like my childhood outside of Batman. Batman was like my first introduction to superheroes in comic books. And then like the Batman animated series, which around that same time you had that amazing 90s X-Men animated show, as well as the Spider-Man cartoon, that it was just a really good fun time to actually have. Like that was where like the superhero stuff really started to hit out into mainstream. That's where a lot of my information came from up until that point. A lot of the characters, I don't even like their comic book iterations, at least the where they were when I was growing up. I didn't like Tony Stark when I was growing up. I didn't like Steve Rogers at all. I didn't really care for Hulk. He wasn't really that developed at the time. Thor was just the Viking god of thunder, so it wasn't that interesting. What Disney and the MCU and Kevin Feige have done with the Marvel properties have created some of the most iconic versions of these characters that there's not a version that has been in the MCU that I didn't fall in love with. If like even with Thor, like I thought Thor was okay eventually, like initially, and then eventually like the way they developed and took his character just completely made me fall in love with that arc, with that character, with Chris Hemsworth, and just they did so many great things with adapting this material and doing something different from the comics and really grounding a lot of these characters in a really, really real way that I think in a lot of ways I feel is better than the comics. I know there's a lot of deeper elements that were just lost because, you know, it's still Disney. It's still like a mostly PG-13 kind of feel that they go for throughout this entire run. That like I know there's a lot of things that get covered in the comics, a lot of things in the characters' story arcs, mostly, especially with Tony Stark and his bouts with alcoholism from the comics that are only kind of hinted at in the MCU. They never directly address it at all, but it definitely makes some sense, and I understand why. But the MCU has just been a phenomenon, and there's no other way to explain it. Anyway, I'm just rambling on at this point, so sorry guys. If you're still here, I want to know all of your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you didn't like it, let me know in the comments what you didn't like, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Everybody take care.